Hello, everybody. Yesterday, I reviewed 2024 with Keith Teare, the author of the That Was the Week newsletter. He made Claude, the Anthropic AI person of the year. He's cheating a little bit. Today, we're going to look forward, perhaps with the help of AI, perhaps without, to imagine what kind of year 2025 is going to be like. We're going to look into our crystal ball with Keith Teare, the publisher of That Was the Week. Keith, I know you're slightly skeptical of forecasting. Is that because you're always wrong?
It's because I know I don't know.
What would happen if you asked your friend Claude about 2025? What do you think he would say?
Should we ask?
We should ask. Ask Claude what 2025 is going to be like.
I will, but let me just find Claude because he's hidden on my computer somewhere. Here we go. I think Claude's gonna make up stuff. That would be my expectation.
Well, I think by definition, if we're talking about the future, you have to make up stuff, don't you?
I think you have to. Here we go. So now I've got Claude. But let's not limit it. What are your top 10 predictions for 2025 in the world?
Yeah, you told me that I had to do all the work, Keith, for this interview, but of course you're the one doing the work, or at least Claude's doing the work.
So here's what it said. It said its history is cut off in April 2024. So discussing 25 is bound to have lots of uncertainty. It warns us. Then it says artificial intelligence is likely to continue rapidly, particularly in multimodal AI that can work with text, images, code, and video. 2, clean energy adoption will accelerate with the automakers having to meet various electric vehicle targets. Space exploration is going to reach new milestones. NASA's Artemis program, returning humans to the moon, being one of those. Quantum computing development is going to continue.
You don't have to be an AI to know these things. Let's start with AI then. What's your sense? We've been looking at some of the predictions for 2025. Casey Newton has some interesting ones. Alex Kantrowitz as well. Are there going to be winners and losers in AI? Some people even think that some of the big players might take a step back from AI and acknowledge that it's not their thing. I mean, especially this supposed battle between OpenAI and Altman and Musk. Are those going to be for real in 2020?
I think the foundation model competition has to continue because the value of owning the foundation layer is probably measured in trillions of dollars. It would be very hard for Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Salesforce not to be going after that future wealth. But I think they're all in a losing battle to Anthropic, OpenAI. I do think Google's done better than I thought. Gemini is very good and is increasingly able to carry out tasks as well as answer questions. So Google's probably the surprise for me in terms of how good it is, and it probably keep being good in 2020. I don't think anyone gets out of the race. I mean, who could get out of the race? Maybe IBM with its Watson, which isn't real.
Maybe they're not in the race. Kantrowitz suggests that Mustafa Suleyman will leave Microsoft. He was, of course, one of the co-founders of DeepMind, then he got pushed out of Google. How important are these individuals like Suleyman or Altman or Musk in the battle for AI supremacy? Do they really matter?
I think they matter on the margin in terms of breakthroughs. I've been struck the last 12 days, OpenAI has been releasing a new thing every day. And the teams working on those things have been appearing on YouTube video. I was struck by how young they all are. I imagine in early to mid 30s. That the bench on AI is now very deep. There's lots of good people, but I don't think there's a lot of good people who will make breakthroughs that require out of the box thinking. I think there's a small number of those. I don't know if Mustafa is one of them. Intuitively, I don't feel like he is, but he may well be.
Yeah, Microsoft seem, of all the companies, to be in the diciest position because it's still not entirely even clear what their strategy is.
Well, you know, their CEO was interviewed this week along with Benioff was interviewed in another thing, and they both talked about the same thing, which is AI agents replacing SaaS, software as a service. Now that is a very big claim. Both companies, by the way, are SaaS, have huge SaaS businesses, so they're really talking about eating themselves or eating their own children, and so you do kind of think that 2025 is going to be the year that proves whether relatively recent infrastructure, SaaS and the cloud, is replaced by AI agents doing what previously required databases and what Satya Nadella called CRUD. That's an interface for a database where you can create or delete or update a task, a record in a database. And they're basically saying, look, that old human being sitting at a screen with a database, updating and editing, that's going away because agents are going to do all that.
Although we're not seeing, and you and I have talked about this before, whether could 2025 be the year of agents where we all get our own personal assistant and it's easy to use? You may be able to architect an assistant, but most of us can't.
I'd like to think that's true. I mean, I already can imagine having hundreds of agents just for me, for every little task.
You may be able to deal with hundreds of agents, but most of us just want one agent.
Because they're going to be specialists. There won't be such a thing as one agent. I can guarantee that. If there are agents at all, there'll be many of them. You can have a cooking agent, a shopping agent, a travel agent, a coding agent for task A, and a different coding agent for task B that knows a different language, a teaching agent, an insurance agent, you name it. Your car's going to become an agent. The Tesla can now be summoned and drive all by
That's not going to happen in 2025, is it?
There's going to be a lot of progress towards it in 25 because it's happening very rapidly now.
Yeah, and as we discussed yesterday, I'm slightly more skeptical. A year is a short time frame in the history of technology, isn't it? Or am I wrong?
You would have thought it was short, but 2024 is things are night and day different than they were at the end of 23. So a lot happens in a year. It feels short, but at the same time, your life's completely transformed. Like remote work with AI and agents has completely changed my day than what it was. I mean, so things do change pretty fast.
What about company? I know you're very excited with the announcement in 2024 of OpenAI's new O3 models. I wonder, there's been a lot of press on the restructuring of OpenAI from non-profit to for-profit. Altman seems to be doing that and at the same time managing a tech company. You've been very, very bullish over the last couple of years on OpenAI. Is it possible that that the politics of running OpenAI and this re-architecting of a non-profit into a for-profit will actually make OpenAI fall behind its competitors, Anthropic, Google, maybe even Microsoft?
It doesn't seem as if that's happening. The announcement made over the last couple of days imply that OpenAI is still very far ahead of its rivals technically. And in thinking through the application of AI. It's funny because in the context you've just put it, the for-profit replacing the not-for-profit, Elon Musk plays the role of the good guy because he's got a legal case trying to stop that from happening.
Yeah, but everybody knows that Musk is not the good guy, and his only interest in here is pursuing his own interest of xAI, which is a for-profit company. So he's not committed to the non-profit model either.
Yes, but there's important nuance there. Musk was the only investor in OpenAI initially. He put up literally all the money for it, and he was the leader of it. And then he got scared. He went on the record saying AI could be dangerous and needs guardrails. And he really strongly believed that OpenAI should be not-for-profit with guardrails. I think he genuinely feels cheated that Altman is turning it into a for-profit, having used Musk's money and brains and recruiting skills.
Well, that's one narrative. I'm not sure everyone would necessarily agree with that.
No, I think it's widely believed to be true. Now, has Musk's, that doesn't mean you're wrong, by the way, Andrew, Musk's motives today. There's a whole set of new variables built around Grok, which he just raised $6 billion for. He's self-interested in more than one way. But I do think his grievances are probably quite emotional and quite real and probably merited.
There's no doubt politics is going to be really important in 2025 in terms of tech. You mentioned Musk. He's more and more in the news. I mean, his failure, if that's the right word with OpenAI, was a political failure. He didn't know how to manage maybe the board or Altman or his fellow investors. What kind of year do you expect Musk to have in 2025? A lot of people believe that he will fall out of favor with Trump, or that Trump will fall out of favor with Musk and he'll just go off and do his own thing. Do you expect this meteoric political rise of Musk? I mean, a year ago, nobody was even talking about Musk as a political player. Where do you expect us to be in late December 2025 with Elon Musk and his involvement in politics?
Well, look, he's becoming a hero of his people. His people now is, the Donald Trump tribe and the Silicon Valley tribe.
Also, I mean, as you know, and Silicon Valley is very much divided on Musk. There are those that love him and those that hate him, and I think some who simultaneously love and hate him.
Yeah, I think that's the norm, actually, those two. It's very hard to predict the year he'll have. I think if you break it down, SpaceX is going to have a great year. Tesla's introducing at least one new model early in the new year that's the cheaper end of the spectrum. And the Model Y is going to be refreshed. It's already the world's best-selling car, which is astounding that that's true, but it is. I think that Neuralink will have a good year. I think Starlink will have a good year. So what might not have a good year is Musk in DC. As we saw yesterday or the day before with the vote on the budget, Republicans are already breaking away from Trump and voting against what Musk wanted to happen. And he's becoming a controversial character. And he's facing the Borg. The Borg lives in DC, and its job is to incorporate everything that comes there. So how does he avoid being incorporated? I don't think he has the disposition to be incorporated, so he's probably going to get angry and frustrated. It's hard to predict where that goes.
What about social media? 2 or 3 big stories. The future of TikTok, that may even be decided. Well, that's going to be decided early in the new year. The future of TikTok, at least in the United States. The future of X, which Musk has turned into a platform, it seems, for his own political views. And of social media, wannabe social media players like Blue Sky. Are these important issues for 2025? Does social media even matter anymore?
I think it matters in that it's where the attention is. I mean, most people's attention is no longer on mainstream media, except probably for sports. I think social media is pretty much the only place people engage and form opinion. As you know from your writing past with Cult of the Amateur, that bad things can happen if you don't trust people. I tend to trust people, so I don't think bad things really do happen that much. And I think social media is just more and more important, especially for young people. I do think TikTok being banned is terrible. I don't know what's going to happen, but I would predict, given the election results, TikTok will not be banned. I think it's inconsistent with the narrative that Musk says he believes in. If it is banned, that would be a sign of his inability to affect outcomes, or his, being a little bit two-faced. So I hope it isn't banned. I think TikTok, as you know, is an incredible app. I mean, it's just very engaging, very entertaining. There's nothing like it that's been this successful, this fast, on this scale, even Facebook.
Could 2025 be the year where we see the generational divide on some of these issues? 2024 was the year Australia banned or began to develop or introduce legislation that will not allow kids to use social media. Best-selling books on the dangers of social media to the so-called anxious generation. TikTok is indeed banned in the US, which I agree with you. I think it's unlikely. But if it is, stranger things have happened. Could we see a generational revolt by young people saying, "Why? What right do you have to ban a media that dominates my life?"
I think, teenagers are always in revolt historically. Any parents ever tried to control a teenager from the age of about 14 up until, I'd say, the mid-20s knows it's impossible. People are independent-minded and strong-willed. If TikTok was banned, you would imagine something would replace it very fast that was invented by teenagers as a replacement. Obviously, the whole China narrative within TikTok is completely made up and fabricated. So the banning is a political act, really, more than a social media concern thing. I'd be shocked if there wasn't revolt. The chances that Australia, which by the way reversed that decision quite quickly once it saw the backlash, could control teenage behavior is absurd.
One of the dark horses that we haven't mentioned, we always talk about OpenAI and Microsoft, of course, Google Gemini, Anthropic. The dark horse here is Facebook. A couple of years ago, everyone was writing off Facebook, especially with their embrace of the metaverse. What kind of year might 2025 be for Facebook? Will they continue to be the dark horse? And maybe that's the wrong term to use.
They've had a great 2020. They stopped leaking money on the face mask. They built an open source AI called Llama that is very good and widely distributed and widely used. And they made more money from advertising than they've ever made before from more people using Facebook than have ever used it before. They probably are, alongside Twitter, which everyone predicted would fail. Those two are the big
Twitter changed its name, didn't it?
Yeah, X. But they're probably the two clear winners in 24. And I think it'd be pretty hard push to say that won't be true in 25.
Is X a winner? Musk might be a winner, but I'm not sure X is.
Well, X has more engaged users than it's ever had.
But Facebook is a much bigger company and a much more consequential one.
Yeah, it's 10 times bigger, I'd say.
Are they, I mean, I use this term carefully, a dark horse. Are they competing? It's sometimes hard to tell who's competing with who. Is Facebook competing with Anthropic and OpenAI and Google, or are they all in different races?
I think they're all a little confused. If you think of Facebook, it abandoned news about a year ago. And if you ever go there, I know you don't, but I do. It's mainly people you know now, birthdays and holiday pictures and stuff of that ilk, plus advertising. There's more advertising than I've ever seen. A lot of video advertising, a lot of clickbait type of advertising. But Facebook's become not very useful. If it wasn't for the fact that your family or friends were there, you probably wouldn't use it ever.
But everyone is using it because everyone's on it.
Yeah. But I think there's a business model imperative to try to invent new things that people pay for. You know, if you were running Facebook, fear of death should be your top thought. And Zuckerberg's very good at that. And Zuckerberg either acquires or builds anything that seems attractive. And hasn't stopped doing that. And I think his pivot from AR and VR to AI is a demonstration yet again of his flexibility. I think Musk is way less flexible and way more focused on the everything app, as he calls it, the X everything app. Banking, money transfers, crypto, everything's going to end up being in there, a little bit like WeChat in China. And so he's got a journey to still travel and seems to be very distracted. So you wonder whether he'll be able to pull that off.
So you think that the Zuckerberg model or the Zuckerberg strategy of focus, a narrower strategy, is smarter than the Musk strategy?
Certainly appears to be if you measure it by money, but they're very different. I mean, Musk has got everything he wanted out of X, right? I mean,
it's interesting that we talk endlessly about OpenAI and Facebook and Google and Microsoft. We rarely ever talk about Amazon anymore. Has Amazon become an afterthought? Will they be an afterthought? I mean, of course, they're the dominant e-commerce platform, and I assume that they're still an important player. in web services. But could 2025 be a year which Amazon is relegated to the second tier of big tech players?
I don't think so, Andrew. I mean, I think they own one thing outright, which is commerce, and they are a huge owner of the cloud, which doesn't go away. They've now launched their own AI models, which are pretty good, apparently, that they want to sell as a service to people who use their cloud, developers mainly. So they're going to be a player.
Well, that's the old so the SaaS model. They're competing directly with Microsoft and Benioff
And Google as
but
well.
nothing much. It doesn't sound that dramatic. What about Apple? What kind of year might... You're a big Apple user and a big Apple follower. What should Apple do in 2025 to make them, again, a central player in the AI narrative? Or perhaps they might be wisest to just step back and let everyone else fight and do their own thing?
I actually think they don't need to be, from the point of view of the iPhone and their revenue stream. Putting ChatGPT in the iPhone and having their own Apple Intelligence is probably good enough for them to be relevant. Gemini on Android is pretty much similar, if not worse, because Gemini isn't as good as ChatGPT. So I don't think Apple really has to do anything. If Apple has a strategic plan, it would be to find products that can move the needle on its revenue. And its revenue is so huge, those products have to be massive in their impact. Clearly, the Vision Pro wasn't. That's a big loser.
Yeah, you bought it.
I
What have you
bought
done
it.
with yours?
I still use it. It's actually very good for particular use cases, but it's not a mass market product, at least not now. So, I think Apple is right not to try to be mainstream AI, but rather focus on its own business model. The good way to think about the whole of all of these companies, Andrew, is there's a big jigsaw puzzle of the world, and each company is a different geography, and there's overlaps between them, but actually they all own quite independent revenue streams that don't really compete with each other.
Well, what revenue streams most up for grabs in 2025? No one's probably going to, certainly next year, no one's going to challenge the hardware power of Apple. Where are the most interesting intersections where we'll be able to see this time next year the future of big tech?
I think it's going to be consumers spending on agents. It'll probably be the second half of the year that really starts to happen. But
these are AI agents, algorithms that will help us lead more efficient lives.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's consumer revenue. I don't think it's going to be business to business. Enterprise revenue is not that much up for grabs yet. I think that might be 2026. So I'd say consumer-facing AI applications are the most likely. That could include government, depending on what Musk and Ramaswamy does. But they could certainly revolutionize health and education if they wanted to.
And speaking of government, Keith, I'm not sure what you're going to do next year. Your dear friend Lina Khan will probably take some university job and no longer be involved in regulating big tech. Is that going to be a big change for 2020?
It's going to be a pleasant change, isn't it? I actually watched the All In podcast with Keith Raboy this week. David Sachs is no longer on it. And they're looking for a replacement, by the way, Andrew. I've put your name forward.
Yeah, I don't think they'll want.
And
they're probably more likely to want you.
This is the sentence that came out of Raboy's mouth. Lina Khan is famous for writing a paper that was full of rubbish.
Well, that's your graduate student remark, which some people might consider a little patronizing. But is she done? Is this whole regulatory impulse finished? Will this new Trump regime with Sachs and Musk involved, will it just let big tech be big tech and in an unregulated way?
I doubt it, actually, because I think some of the people Trump is putting in place are still regulators in their brain. But it's going to be more interesting what they choose to regulate. Most people think it'll be more M&A that gets land, more IPOs as well, by the way, is a big prediction.
Right, and M&As. But, a lot of predictions about 2025, Thomas Tongus, Alex Kantrowitz. A lot of people believe that there'll be winners and losers when it comes to big tech and regulation. A lot of people are a little skeptical of Google. Some people, I think, Kantrowitz believes that Google will lose its second monopoly case. How do you expect Google to survive or not survive in 2020?
A year ago, I would have worried for Google. I think now the atmosphere has changed with the election, and that Google can probably breathe a sigh of relief and not be as threatened. And I think it's quite a profound change when you move from these guys are too big, what's that? The Democrat who hired Lina Khan, the woman who's best known for trying to take on the
Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren. The Elizabeth Warren view is kind of gone. And I don't think has any chance of coming back, but it does dominate current law cases. I think those law cases will go into the background, and the regulatory framework will more focus on what to allow as opposed to what to disallow. I think crypto will benefit from that as well.
You mentioned crypto and David Sacks. He now is apparently, quote unquote, the AI and crypto czar of the new administration. How badly wrong can this administration go? Could we have a crypto crash? I don't know what the price of Bitcoin is right now, but it's certainly unusually high. Is it possible that we're on the brink of another .com meltdown when it comes to crypto in 2020?
That's the stated point of view of most non-crypto participants.
Are you a participant?
I'm not actually, but I was for a while. I think it's most likely that Bitcoin's going to become an approved asset for government stores, if you like gold, because of the people who are in power. And I think when that happens, the argument that Bitcoin isn't backed by government goes away, and it becomes an asset that does have government backing. And when that happens, and why would that happen, is all to do with reserve currencies and how the world works. It's probably too complex for us to get into now. But why it might happen is to do with reserve currencies and the dollar's role as the reserve currency not being tenable.
Right. And I wonder, we'll talk about this next year. I wonder whether a number of shifts are taking place. On the one hand, we have a larger and larger US debt, which Trump doesn't seem to be bothered with. The rise of Bitcoin, challenging the political independence of the Federal Reserve. I wonder whether one of the potentially more interesting things in 2015 will be a shift from a world centered on the Fed to one networked around crypto. It's not going to happen within a year, but we could see a slow shift in that direction.
I think if that happens, crypto gets incorporated into what we call the Borg earlier.
I thought the Borg was DC.
Yeah, DC. Look, crypto is now been incorporated by the financial institutions like BlackRock. The next stage is government, and it doesn't seem impossible that could happen. And if that happens, crypto becomes just another asset that's used in the financial system for particular purposes. And I now, when we say crypto, we're really talking about Bitcoin there. It's not all crypto. And I think there's lots and lots of other things going on in crypto that, just like always, will be on a spectrum of crime all the way through to good things. And you're going to have to pick and choose there. And government's not going to get involved there other than possibly through regulation, keeping out of the way.
In other words, you have no idea, Keith.
I have no idea.
Let's end with, nobody has any idea of how 2025 is going to work out. That's what makes it so interesting, particularly given that Trump's very ambitious on a lot of tech fronts. But let's end with a couple of visions from you. Firstly, what would you like to happen? What would be the best thing that could happen in 2025, realistic?
The best thing that could happen in 2025? Good question. My brain is full of lots of specific things that would imply human beings having an easier life achieving the things that they have to do, which I think AI will start to deliver on.
And that's with agents in particular. That's what
with agents in particular. I don't think there's one big thing. I mean, I don't think there's a Tesla car that would justify that statement, or a SpaceX mission, or you know, or a crypto play that would justify that decision. I think it's the overall impact of lots and lots of different use cases of AI changing people's lives.
And then the worst case, what could really seriously go wrong in 2025 from a tech point of view?
Military weapons produced by technology companies, leading to automated warfare, reducing the fear of human cost, therefore allowing the world to get out of control.
Is that likely in 20? I mean, that's a chilling vision, but is that likely to happen within a year of the Trump administration?
His demeanor suggests not, but you know, what's happening in Ukraine and Europe in general, in Germany, as you pointed out, there's a lot of instability in the world, and Trump is certainly looking at the world through the prism of American competition, not cooperation. So, you know, nationalism is a unexploded gas, and it could always be sparked.
But finally, Keith, what kind of promise does 2025 have? I think Lenin famously said sometimes within a year you have entire centuries being made, and 1917 comes to mind, the Russian Revolution. Certain other years, 1968, for example, 2001 was another supposedly a year where everything changed. Could 2025 be a big year or just another year?
I'd say the chances are that it is just another year, but the incremental change will be quite big. But I think if you extended it to the next half of the decade, I would suspect by the end of the decade we're living completely different lives to the life.
We're cheating a bit using decades. How close we will be in 2025 is, of course, the middle year of the 2020s. Well, 2025, I know this is a dumb way of putting it, but I can't think of anything else. Will we be closer to 2030 or 2020 in 2025?
We'll be closer to 2026 for sure. There's going to be a leap. At some point, there's going to be a leap. And the leap is really all about the application of AI to specific things. It's already possible. You know, Alexandra Greenhill is in the chat here, says she loves the analogies I use, and she mentions the unborn baby, the unborn child. I do think there are millions of unborn children. That is to say, AI is already capable of a lot of tasks that no one has yet written the software to apply it to. We're super close because it's already possible.
Maybe I'm going to title 2025 The Leap Year, Keith.
The leap year, yeah, that would be.
Well, I hope you and I will still be around at the end of 2025. We will see whether or not some of your predictions come out. I hope you have a wonderful new year, Keith. We're going to not do the show for a couple of weeks. We'll be back, the third week of January, going back to regular. That was the week.
I'm going to do a newsletter on January the 16th, 17th, and we'll discuss it on the 19th, I think, when you get back from Europe.
Yeah, I will be at DLD. Keith Teare, Happy New Year. We will talk third week of January. Lots of interesting predictions for 2020. It's going to be the leap year. Thank you again, Keith.
Bye.